Trigger Mike Coppola was his rattlesnake mean gangster. If it weren't for bad luck, he would have had no luck at all in his married life. He started out as with the 116th Street crew, and then they merged with the Lucianos, and then eventually they became the Genovese crime family, and he became a captain in the family. So he married this woman, Doris Lehman. She was beautiful. She was a cabaret dancer. They married in 1943, and they had a son, David, in 1945. So Coppola was enormously strong member of the mafia. He ruled over this huge criminal empire that included all of the narcotics trafficking for Harlem and all the numbers business for Harlem. The mob had shot their way into Harlem in the 30s and taken over the business. So it was huge. He was a really important guy in the crime world, and he was smart enough to spend a lot of money on politics to make sure he was left alone. So in 1946, it's brought to his attention that this guy, Joseph R. Scottoriggio, he was a Republican district captain in Harlem. And Scottoriggio has decided to endorse the opposition candidate, a Democrat. I don't know why. Coppola said, no, you're not going to do this. An argument breaks out. Scottoriggio said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. On election day, this is the stupid part. Coppola and Joey Rao, the Rayos is they're an old Italian Harlem mob family, but Rao's restaurant is still there in Italian Harlem. You can buy Rao's sauces, which are really good, in supermarkets now. But anyway, Rao and Coppola, for some idiot reason, take along Doris, his wife, and Doris's father, if you can believe this, David Lehman, a retired stock salesman. He's in tow, and they drive to Scottoriggio's house on First Avenue, 104th Street, and they wait. They wait for Scottoriggio to come out. Why an experienced mob guy would take his wife and his father-in-law with him for this? Who knows? Anyway, Scott-Durrigo comes out of the house. He's got two guys with him, two poll workers. Lear, Coppola and Rao leap out of the car. They've got blackjacks, and so they beat this poor man senseless. They kill him. It took him a few days to die, but uh, they beat him badly. The two poll workers watched, and then they ran away. They didn't even bother to call the cops. Finally, people from the street. So immediately, Coppola and Rao are picked up, but they're released on bond. But still, the city is outraged. This is way above the pale, and they want blood. So Coppola realizes he's in trouble, and he tells Doris and her father, "You got to go disappear for a while because you were witnesses who saw you in the car, blah blah blah." And they send him to live with Butsy Morelli. He was a mob boss up in Providence, Rhode Island. But District Attorney Hogan, and I'll tell you this for the 100th time, grew up on my street, a generation before me, and he launches this massive manhunt. They go busting up mob families and turning over tables looking for this woman. They want her. And finally, the pressure's too much and she surrenders. And she appears before a grand jury. They get her on perjury charges and she has to reappear shortly afterwards. But she's pregnant. She needs to give birth to another child. They let her do that, but when the pregnancy's over, she's to reappear and speak about what she saw. So on March 17th, 1948, Doris goes into St. Vincent's Hospital down in Manhattan. They give birth to a daughter. The next day, she's 26 years old. She's a former dancer, uh, fine health, great health. She dies, and the doctor says, "Well, it's complications from childbirth," and so reporters are making these arguments. Well, why would she have lived an entire day? Well, why did she just die on the table as so many complications from childbirths happen? Nobody had any answers about. Nobody knew nothing about nothing. So no autopsy is performed because Coppola somehow managed to get in, get the body, and have it cremated. So it doesn't matter. There's going to be 5,000 people. Now, when I say 5,000 people attended her wake, a lot of them were just curious to see the mafia guy's wife get waked. But it was at Ferenga's brother's funeral parlor on 204 East 106th Street. It's still funeral parlor, just under a different name. So years later, not 7 years later, Coppola has remarried to this woman, Anne Drummond. Anne Drummond hated him by the end of their marriage, a brief marriage. And she told reporters that she had proof. She had proof that Coppola had murdered her, his wife, Doris. But she never revealed it. So, and as I say, she really hated this guy, and so if she had the information, she would let it go. It was her theory, which is, or actually, what she said was he told her that he needed to kill her to prevent her from testifying against him. Uh, Maybe. So in 1960, Coppola sues. He wants a divorce from Anne. He's saying that she threatened to kill him. But Anne has photos of herself beaten up. Coppola really went to town on her, beat her up badly. So they get a divorce. It's a quick one. Later that year, she's still pissed off. She agrees to testify against Coppola in an income tax evasion case. And it involves several other of Coppola's guys as well. She goes to Miami where she thinks she's safe. But in October of 1960, Coppola's guys found her. They beat her, not to death, but damn close. Regardless, she kept testifying against him. And Coppola was indicted on 4 counts of income tax evasion in 1961. He pled guilty in 62, and he's fined $40,000, a lot more than it sounds today. And he was sentenced to a year and a day in federal prison. No one at that time ever thought Coppola would see the inside of a cell in his position. He was that powerful. Anyway, Drummond leaves for Europe. I don't blame her, to save her, to protect herself. But she stupidly took $250,000 in cash with her. So the question was it Coppola's cash or Genovese's cash? The Genovese crime family's cash. Nobody's really sure. My guess would be it was the Genovese's family's cash, because anyway, Genovese's cash. She writes a letter from Rome to the IRS and writes a separate, more detailed letter to Attorney General Bobby Kennedy. She details everything she knows about the Genovese crime family activities and Coppola's activities. And then in September, she took her own life in September 1962. Following his release from prison, Coppola is pushed from power. Nobody wants this guy around. His wife has just caused more misery for people that didn't even know her. So they're sick of Coppola, and he's just got a stench around him. I mean, he's a guy that's suspected of killing two women he's married to. Nobody wanted him around. So he got booted down the mob, and in 1966, just like 2 years after he got out of prison, he died of natural causes. Joey Rao, who was the hood who beat up Mr. Scottoriggio, never did any time for it, was never arrested, nothing. He rose up through the mafia in Harlem. He died in 1962 of a stroke at age 61. Rao, by the way, we'll do a thing about it sometimes, but in 1931, Rao was working for Dutch Schultz, the bootlegger, and Rao was Schultz's primary gunner. He was a dangerous guy, and Mad Dog Cole and his boys do a drive-by shooting on East 107th Street, where Rao lived, and they shot up the street. They missed Rao, who ran inches in front of the bullets, and they killed some kid, some little boy. And that put them both in